Hello, welcome to another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden. Today's episode is basically a special on the drains that I have in my allotment. The bottom half of my allotment, which is nearest the lane, the first few years that I had quite a lot of trouble with it flooding. Even though I'm in a sort of field, and the field is shaped sort of like this, and I'm sort of in the middle, so it's the highest point. Because of the paths and also the lane, it generates like a water barrier, and in the winter months, and particularly in the spring if it was wet, I'd get a lot of water logging in the bottom end of the allotment. So I tried various means of getting around this. I dug a trench all down, sort of down one side from about halfway down to the road, and then along the side of the road. And I had that in for about 2 years, but it wasn't particularly effective. I've also tried adding a lot more sort of organic material, sort of manure and a lot of straw, bark chippings, etc., to try and improve the drainage within the soil. But because of the barriers that the paths generate, these allotments have been here for around 100 years, and basically the paths are, you know, sort of that compacted that it just basically makes a barrier. The top half of the allotment is sitting on sandstone, so if I dig down about 2 feet, I hit sandstone, so obviously the top part drains quite well. The bottom half is sitting on clay, and to my knowledge the clay is at least 1 metre or so deep, so basically I can't dig through the clay and backfill with gravel or rubble to sort of create a way for the water to drain. So having used various methods, what I've actually done now is I've put in a drain pipe, which I'll show you later on, which goes down the side and down the front, and I've also sunk a barrel into the ground actually, which is inside the path, and into there drains my allotment and also my neighbour's allotment. But this episode will explain exactly what I've done and how I've done it and why I've done it. So if you have similar drainage problems within your allotment, you can use these ideas in your allotment. So welcome to another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden. So the part of my allotment that floods is basically from here all the way down, and what I tend to do is plant things down the bottom that do well in the wet anyway. Obviously I've got the beans there which like a lot of water, rhubarb likes a lot of water. So basically from here up is sitting on sandstone, so that drains really well, and from here down is sitting on clay. Now the drain pipe, which I'll show you in a moment, runs from about here where my foot is, and it runs all the way along down the side of the path here till it gets to this corner of the allotment, and then it runs along underneath these calandulas here till it gets to the barrel which is sitting under this slab here. And my neighbour John, he's got exactly the same thing but in reverse. So there's a pipe running all the way along the front of John's, and then it turns the corner here and then goes all the way just beyond that grass path, just about here. John's was flooding here as well. So at this point here, the pipe is around 9 to 10 inches below the ground, and obviously as it comes this way, exactly like mine, and all the way along the front here, it slowly drops till it gets to here where it's around 18 inches to 2 foot below the ground level. The reason we've done that is obviously we want it to be lower than a spade. We've kept it at the edge of the allotment, so you know, so it doesn't disturb any plants. So we don't grow any vegetables on top of it. We just grow calendulas, or it's up by the path or whatever. So, and basically the barrel which is in here, which I'll show you in a moment, is underneath this slab. And during this video, what I'm going to do is show you, I'm actually going to put a manhole here rather than this slab, because I find it quite awkward to keep getting this slab up and down when I'm trying to drain the barrel. So I'll be showing you that during this video. But the pipe work, which runs from here round and up, I've just explained, is this pipe work here. And I managed to get this from a friend, and obviously there's quite a few metres of it, but this is a pipe which is around 6 inches in diameter. It's the pipe work that they use as drainage in the side of roads, etc. And farmers use it as well to drain fields and that. And basically what I did is I took an angle grinder, and every other rib here I cut through with an angle grinder. I cut a slit about 5 inches wide and about 5 millimeters, so it's basically a grinding disc, and I went through every other one, so every inch or so there's a groove. And then on the opposite side I did exactly the same thing. I cut grooves all the way down here, every other one. So when you look at the pipe when it's in the ground like that, there's basically grooves. If I can just put that on my leg, there's a groove down this side and there's a groove down this side about 5 inches long, and basically the water from the ground will drain into these grooves and then will run down the inside of the pipe. Now after time you will get some silt settling in the bottom of the pipe, which is obviously just earth coming from the garden, but the water basically comes through the pipe into the pipe and then runs down the pipe into the barrel which is here, which I'll show you in a moment. And then what I have to do is periodically, when we've had a large downpour of rain and the allotment starts to become flooded, what I do is I then put a pond pump in there, which just cost about £20, with the same hose pipe that I water the garden with, and I basically put the pond pump in there connected to the hose pipe, and then I empty the barrel by pumping the water through the hose pipe, and then it goes up the path here to the top where you see the grass on the left hand side, and I drain the water into there where the ground is free draining. As an alternative, what I could do is run a pipe down the lane, and then I could drain it down that way, or drain it that way. As I say, this is the highest part of the field, but I find it easiest to drain it back onto my own allotment by taking the hose pipe up there, which is probably about 80 feet worth of allotment. So it's 80 feet away from here, and I find that during a year, in the last 12 months, I've emptied the barrel 6 times, and I do that when I find that the ground is starting to become flooded. If the ground isn't flooded, I basically leave it and don't bother with emptying the barrel during the year. So I only do it when the ground's starting to flood. So I'll show you the barrel. So this is the top of a barrel, and this is a barrel which is about 4.5 foot high. And what I've done is basically dug a hole in the ground, obviously around 5.5 foot deep, and I've sunk the barrel into the ground, and I've drilled holes in the bottom of the barrel so that the barrel doesn't become buoyant. One thing that you do need to do is make sure that the barrel's got holes in the bottom of it. The reason being is if it does rain, and water goes down the side of the barrel can become buoyant and basically lift out of the ground, which is obviously what you want to avoid. When I first put it in, to be honest with you, it hadn't got holes in it, and the barrel did become buoyant and started to lift out of the ground. The other thing is as well, with holes being in the barrel, is obviously during the summer when I'm not emptying it, it will drain back into the ground if the ground becomes dry. So as you can see on this side here, there's the pipe coming from, so here's my allotment. So the pipe runs down the side here and then enters the barrel here, and as I say, that's probably around 2 feet, 18 inches to 2 feet below the ground. And as I explained, you can see a little bit of silt at the bottom of the pipe there. And likewise on the other side, there's the pipe running from my neighbour John. We did both allotments in one go, so both of these allotments drain into the same barrel. And then, as you can see, there's some water in there now. So once the barrel becomes full during the winter months, I empty that, and then basically what water is left in the ground will continue to drain into this barrel. So what I'm going to show you next in the video is I've basically going to put, rather than keep lifting this slab up and down whilst I'm trying to pump the water out, I'm going to put a manhole on the top of here to make it easier to basically get into here so I can pump the water out. So if you want more information on how this works, basically these are called French drains, and basically the way we installed the pipe is by digging a 2-foot trench all the way up and across on both sides, and then we put the pipe work in, surrounded the pipe with gravel. You don't have to do this, but it's ideal that you do that. We just got some gravel that we managed to get on the cheap, so we surrounded the pipe with gravel, and then we just backfilled the earth that we took out of the trench back over, so you know, to bury the pipe. This barrel that we've got here is an old chemical barrel that I salvaged from the place of where I work, and this is a thick plastic barrel. Because you're sinking it in the ground, I suggest you don't use a steel barrel, because obviously if it was steel, because it's sank in the ground, it'll start to rot and rust in the ground. So you need to have a good thick plastic barrel in the ground. If you get a water butt from a garden centre, which you can pick up for maybe £10 or £15, that will be more than good enough if you can't get hold of any plastic barrels, and all you need to do is basically just cut the top off it like I've done here. This barrel, I think if you look on the internet, it's called an interceptor, which is basically where it intercepts these pipes and fills up with water. So that's basically the official words for them, if you like. So the next stage of the video, I'll be showing you how I'm going to make the top for this, which is what I've always planned to do, which is what I'm going to do in the next 24 hours. So the next stage of the video is to show you the metalwork, which is going to be the manhole or the cover for this, rather than this combination of slabs. And then what I'm going to do is make the steel that's going to go in there, and then I'm going to be concreting around that to concrete it into the ground. And the concrete's going to go from this point here, or from kind of this point here, all the way down here. And the concrete that I'm using to do this is a multi-purpose concrete made by Lafarge. Now, if you're doing any concreting in your garden or your allotment, this stuff comes highly recommended. The reason being is it's pre-mixed. It's relatively cheap, but it's very good quality. So what you need to look for, the blue ring or the Lafarge sign, which is part of the Lafarge tarmac group. And this concrete, it's mixed perfectly, so all you've basically got to do, it's very easy to use, all you've got to do is mix your water to these bags, the contents of these bags, and then mix the concrete up, and it's a perfect mixture for doing anything like this within your garden. I would strongly recommend that you use this, basically because you want a good strong concrete. So to make the drain cover, I'm using completely recycled materials. This is a steel plate. I'll just show you, it's quite thick. It's probably about 6mm thick steel, and I think that was used to hold a compressor plate at one point. And I'm using these bits of old ladder, which is quite thick steel. It's probably about 8mm in diameter. And what I'm going to do, the first stage is I'm going to cut these middle parts of the ladder off, and I'm going to use these to make a frame round here, because obviously this bit's going to lift out of the drain, and the frame that will be left behind will be the bit that stays inside the concrete. So with the use of an angle grinder with a cutting disc in, as you can see it's a narrow disc as opposed to a grinding disc, which is slightly fatter. What I've done is I've cut off the runs, these bars that are in the middle, and as you can see it doesn't really matter that these are a bit rough because they're going to be on the concrete side. So this bit in here will be the inside bit that you can see. So the first thing I can do is, you can see this has been cut off with either a gas axe or a plasma cutter. So I first need to make sure that I cut the end off so it's a straight line. So again, using a straight, what I'm going to do is just draw a line across there and then cut that through with the angle grinder, so I know I've got a nice straight edge. Then I'm going to cut a piece of this out, so I'll cut it again somewhere here using the straight, like that. And I'm going to cut a piece of steel which will go from this edge here all the way down this edge to here. And what I want to do is to make it so it's exactly the same length as this, plus about 5mm, because what I don't want to do is make it so it's exactly the same size as this, because this won't easily get in and out then. So what I want to do is make it slightly bigger, so I'll make it just 5mm longer, and then the piece that goes along here will again be 5mm bigger, plus 2 widths of that. So if you imagine, this piece will come in like that, and then the next piece will go like that, yeah, and then I shall weld across this piece here and down the edge to connect the two together. So this piece here needs to be, well, if that's 8mm wide, it needs to be 16 plus 5, so it needs to be 21mm longer than this is wide. So the next step is to cut the edge straight, and then to cut a piece that's as wide as that is, plus 5mm. So as you can see, I've now cut the 4 bits. So the corner joints are going to end up looking like that, so you can see why the one at the top is wider than these side ones here. So now the next step is to put a bevel on these edges here. And the way to do that is with an angle grinder. What I'm going to do is cut along there. So if you imagine, all I'm going to do is just take the corner off there, all the way down there, and then all the way down there, because what I want is to weld into the bevel, so that I'll get a nice flush weld all the way down, both the inside edge and the outside edge. Because what I'm going to do is, I've got my little friend here, look. I'm going to weld down the outer edge here, and then I'm going to weld down the inner edge to give it extra strength, and then I'm just going to weld across the top and across the bottom, just so it's welded all the way around. Because what I don't want to do is get water get water down inside this edge and obviously start to corrode the side. This is actually 10mm now, I've measured it, so it's going to take a few years to get through it if it does start to rust, but just so it's, whilst I'm here, I'll just weld round all 4 sides of it so it's nice and strong. And also because this plate has got the corner rounded off, it doesn't really matter if the weld down there does jot out slightly. So I'm going to bevel the edges and then I'll show you the bevels. So, just to better explain, by holding it flat on the floor with my foot, so it's nice and safe, obviously wearing goggles, I'm going to take the angle grinder and I've changed this for a grinding mill rather than a cutting mill. I'm just going to take it down at a 45-degree angle and take off the corner. I'll show you in a second what it looks like when I've done that. So as you can see now, I've beveled this corner off and this corner off. If you turn it that way, you'll be able to see I've beveled down that edge. And I've beveled down that edge. I've also taken off just the edge of the paint there, so that when I'm welding I haven't got any paint that's going to catch on fire on any of the edges. So I've beveled it there, and I've just taken off about 3 or 4mm of paint with the angle grinder, just so it'll have a nice clean weld all the way down. I'll now repeat this on all 4 pieces at each end. So as you can see, I've now beveled the edge on these. I've also cleaned up this side, because if you imagine this one is going to fit on like that. So this edge here is where I'm going to be welding, so I've obviously cleaned off this bit here as well, both sides. There's a hole in this one, but that was in the steel when I got it. That's not going to cause any problems, so no problems there. So the next step is to weld all of these together, and the way I'm going to do that is by using this as a template or as a guide. I'm going to mole grip those together there, and then obviously this one will go in like that. Now, so I'm going to mole grip them two together, and now if you can see this bevel here, you see has made like a groove for me to weld down into, and there's obviously a little groove at the top here also to weld into. So what I'll do now is weld up the outside of there, whilst this is hard against these, so I know full well that it's square. So I can position all of these. Also, it's difficult at the minute with one hand, but obviously it's hard against that, and it's hard against this, so I know that it's true, it's square. Weld up there, and then I'll move this over and do the other side, and then move it again, and then do each corner like that against the square plate at the bottom, and then I know for a while it's all true to the holes. And then what I should end up with is this framework, which is going to have a 5mm spacing all the way around, and this framework will be exactly the same shape as this, but just slightly bigger, so there's some give, so I can get this out when it's in the drain. So now I've welded down each of the sides by having this inside, and I've also welded down the inside out, so you can see that, on all 4 corners. So all 4 corners now are welded on both the inside and the outside, and also across the top like this. And I haven't bothered with the inside, but down the outside I've just ground the edge off and across the top, so it's nice and smooth. Now, to prevent this from falling all the way through when it's cemented in, I need to put some corner pieces on each of the corners to basically hold that in position when it's finally concrete into the ground. And the way I've done this is I've got another piece of the metal, which is 65mm wide. So what I've done is I've drawn a straight, and then I've measured 65mm across, and drawn down another straight edge. And then if I measure draw a line from that corner to that corner, that's then going to be 45 degrees. So obviously that's a perfect square. if I cut from corner to corner it's 45 degrees, so what I'm going to do now is cut along there, down there, along there, up there and down there, which will make 4 triangles, and each triangle will go into each of the corners here, here, here and here to support the drain lid when it's in place. So I've cut out the 4 corners, and basically all these are is I've beveled one side, so it's beveled along there and along there. I'm not going to weld it along the top because that will interfere with the drain colour. So I've cut also the corner off so it sits in there. You see where the weld is there, so it'll fit there. So now with this, and this is the important bit, basically build something like this onto a slab. This is why I'm doing this onto slabs, because you know a slab's going to be level. So when you put all this onto the slab, it'll be level. So what I need to do now is put these corner pieces in, make sure it's all level, and then weld along here, and down each bit to hold the top in. So what I've done now is I've welded in all the way around the edge and down the sides there and there on all 4 corners like this. So it's still a little bit hot. So that's the side you're going to see, like that. And then the grill, or the manhole cover, or whatever you call it, will sit into it like that. So that's what you'll see on the top. So as you can see, because I welded it upside down, this is all perfectly flush. And obviously all you need to do to lift it is stick your finger in there, then you can get easily in, and then that will more than support any weight that could possibly go on it. But just to make sure, before I concrete it in, what I'm going to do is just to hit each of these corners with a hammer, just to make sure they're perfectly welded in, but I'm sure they will be. So now the next step is, obviously this is going to be sitting in concrete, so the concrete's going to come up to there, all the way around. So what I need to do is to put some like reinforcing bits into the concrete. So if I turn this upside down, out the way. So what I'm going to do now is to get some concrete reinforcing, which I happen to have in the allotment, and make some sort of wires coming through like this, here and here, so that when it's in the concrete, they'll also be supporting it, because if I don't do that, it'll only be supported on this ledge here, which will be obviously underneath. I'm looking at it upside down now. So I'm going to put some wires in here, so they'll be embedded in the concrete, and that will also support the weight, because this is probably, with that and that on top of it, it's probably about 10 kilos in weight. So I obviously want to make sure that the wires are on there supporting it in the concrete. So that's the next step. So that's the metalwork finished. So all this is a bit of, it's actually concreting grill. I've had it on the allotment for years. I actually inherited it when I took on the allotment, but pretty much anything will do here. All you need is a this is about 6mm. It is a little bit rusty, which is not ideal, but obviously all of this will be encased in concrete. So as you can imagine now, you're looking at the underneath of it. So if I just turn this over, like that. So all of this here will be encased in concrete from there down, and then from here down. So all of this wire work that I've tacked onto the side here, all of that will be encased in concrete. And then, so the only thing you'll actually see is this metal hoop at the top. And then, just give us a sec. then the grill will go in like that, so that'll be the bit that you see, and then all of this bit at the bottom here that you see, all this wire and stuff, that'll be encased in the concrete. So now I've got the metalwork in, I've dug around the top of the barrel, I've put in a board down this side, some shuttering to stop the concrete from going over there. This side I've not bothered, I'm just going to basically concrete up to there, and I've put some shuttering inside with these pieces of wood here which are just screwed in, so after the concrete is set I can unscrew them and then take all this woodwork out, which will expose the barrel again. So basically I've dug out probably about 6-7 inches down all the way around, and I'll concrete underneath that slab there and then round here. So all I need to do now is mix the concrete. I have put a little bit of duct tape, I don't know if you can see, just to make sure that that was sealed there and there. I'll put a little bit there as well. So I'm ready to concrete now, so I've made sure all of this is level with a spirit level, so I've made sure that all of this is perfectly level. I don't know if you can see the bubbles in the middle there, so all of that is level, and then all of the board here and against this slab here is all level. There you go. So what I'll do now is mix the concrete on this board here. It's just a piece of old hardboard, which you can see I've used it to mix cement before. And I'll be mixing that with the shovel, and then with this small trowel here I'll use that to trowel it into the holes, just to make sure, I'll do it bit by bit just to make sure I get concrete all the way around evenly and there's no air bubbles in it. So what I'll do, I'll be dropping the concrete in like that, and then just making sure, just sort of wriggling it round, make sure there's no air bubbles in it or anything like that. So the next step is to mix the concrete, and all I need to do, because I've used Lafarge concrete, all I need to do is basically just add water to this. And the one thing I like about Lafarge is on all of the bags, and I'll just turn this bag over, you'll see that there's a help line just there. So if you're ever unsure of how to what products you need to use, or how much you need, or anything like that, if you call these people, they're very helpful, and they'll explain to you exactly how much you need and how to mix it, and how and the tips of how to do it properly to ensure that you get a strong concrete mix. So that's the second mixture in. As you can see, what I've done is I've again gone round and bobbed it all in like that, to make sure, pushed it down with a trowel to make sure it's all gone in underneath the metalwork and round the wires which are going to support it. We're now doing a third mix, so I think it's going to end up being 6 bags, and obviously the last bag, the last 2 bags are going to basically level it all off so that the concrete's at this level. As soon as I've done that, what I need to do is I need to make sure that the water stays in the concrete. This is the advice that Lafarge gave me when I called them. So what I'm going to do is cover this with plastic, so if it rains it's protected against the water, but also because of the hot weather we're having, you don't want the water to evaporate out of the concrete, because it'll weaken the structure of the concrete. So as soon as I've done this, what I'm going to do is cover it with plastic to ensure that the water, the moisture, stays in the concrete so it can set properly. So I've put the concrete in. As you can see, I've levelled off this pit here. I will just go over it again in a second to finish it off. But what you need to do is just push the stones down like that, just by doing that with the trowel, and then what you'll find is the stones will sink a little bit further down. All the air bubbles will come out of the concrete like that as you're going around. And then what you can do is, just by going back over it then with the trowel, you can get this nice smooth finish. Stop measure. So that's the top of the drain completely smoothed off. you'll see that's like a watery sheen on the top, which is a good sign that it's all settled. So what I need to do now is Lafarge have advised me that, that there should be no sort of weight bearing on this now for at least 3 days, ideally 7. So what I'm going to do is cover it with plastic to keep the water in, so that it reacts with the cement properly, and then I'm just going to put like a little fence round it to stop anybody from sort of walking on it. And then as soon as I've done that, I'm basically just going to leave it for 7 days, and then I can basically take all the shuttering out, and then I can put the drain cover in, and that's it, the job's finished. So what I've done, just temporarily, I've made a little fence up at the top there with just some racks out of the greenhouse. I've put a post up the side there just to support it, and I've put these old bits of pallets on top. What I'm going to do now is to put some black plastic over, so if it rains, the rain doesn't go on it. So there's the plastic. What I've done is the board you saw me mixing the concrete on, I've basically wrapped a piece of black plastic around that, both sides, and I've put it on top of those bits of pallets as you've just seen. I've just weighed it down with some bricks and half a slab at this end here, so if it does rain, the water will just run straight off there. It's going to protect it from the sun, it's going to protect it from the wind, so that's just the job. All I've got to do now is wait for 7 days and then remove all of this, and then I should have a bit of perfect concrete. So I hope this edition of Jim's Allotment Garden has been of some use to you. If you have got drainage issues yourself, I've tried, as I explained at the beginning, I've tried various means to improve the drainage in my allotment, and this is really the only way that I've at present found that effectively drains the allotment. So I hope this episode has been of some use to you. Please do give me your comments down below. If you've got any other ideas that could possibly help people, then do share your ideas, and please subscribe, etc. So anyway, thank you for watching another episode of Jim's Allotment Garden, and I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you, bye bye.